Hello, everybody, and welcome to this panel, which begins the Unquiet Spirits Promo Blitz. You know what's coming. Be prepared for it. Don't miss any of these panels that are coming up because we've got a bunch. Today with me, I have Jiang, I have Francis Lu Pai Ippolito, I have Geneve, Flynn, and Yvette Tan, and we are going to talk about being unquiet and the essays in Unquiet Spirits. So, because I'm not going to do it justice, I'm going to have these wonderful people, these wonderful writers go one by one and tell us about you as a writer and your experiences in writing this and a little bit about your essay, and then we'll kind of get into more questions. So, and I'm going to say Francis on my screen. I'm going to go clockwise like this.
Okay, so I'm first. So I'm Francis Lu Pai Ippolito. I'm a writer based in Portland, Oregon. I write primarily speculative, but I write for children's, for adults, and nonfiction, sort of anything that comes to my mind, poetry too now. And in addition to writing, I do run a free writing workshop with guest speakers for middle school and high school students. It's a hybrid program. So if you have any interested students, you can Zoom in, but it's also in person at the local library that I'm at. As for my essay, it's called Belonging to Fear, and I really wanted to be able to write about the immigrant experience along with the recent uprising in Asian hate, but contextualized within folklore of my childhood.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, how about you, Jean?
Hi, I'm Genevieve Flynn. I'm Chinese, born in Malaysia, and I now call Australia home. I'm a multi-award-winning speculative fiction editor, horror author, and poet. And my essay is called Some Things Are Dangerous But Can Be Lived With, the ghost baby of Malaysian mythology. And I wanted to write about generational trauma in my family. And I used the Guikia, which is like a demon baby. And it's formed by black magic. And in my original short story from Black Cranes called Little Worm, I used it as kind of like a tulpa, where it represented hopes and dreams, and it became monstrous. But in this essay, I used it as like a representation maybe of grief, of how it transforms over time and the impact over generations. So yeah, and I'm just so excited to be part of this collection. When you and Lee invited me to contribute, I thought that's what I want to write about. I want to write about my mum's story, and I want to write about it through that lens.
That's awesome. Well, we're certainly glad you did join because it wouldn't be here without you. So we can get into that a little bit later. How about you?
So my name is Jiang. I am Chinese Canadian, born in Fujian, China. Now I live in Toronto, Ontario. I usually write speculative fiction, but dabble in realist fiction as well. I would say I'm a newer writer compared to everyone else here. And my essay is called The Unvoiced, The Unheard, The Unknown, and The Unquiet. And I suppose at the heart of my essay is intergenerational trauma, tradition, and the resistance against it, immigration, and also the ghosts and spirits that these things create.
Awesome. Well, we're super excited that you joined us. These have been like such amazing essays. I know like everybody watching, except for maybe one or two people, have not gotten to read these, but you have no idea what's coming. Like these are incredible essays, every single one of these. These people have made me cry. These people on the screen right now. So Yvette, can you introduce yourself and then tell us about your essay?
Okay, hi, I'm Yvette Tan. I'm Chinese Filipino, third generation. My essay is called Falling Leaves, New Soil. I talk about how, because I'm third generation, I was raised more Filipino than Chinese, so I'm a bit cut off from my Chinese ancestry. I don't know very much about it in terms of, because I write horror, of course I center on the supernatural aspects of Filipino culture, but I don't know very much about it in terms of the Chinese culture. And because of this essay, I've started going around asking people who are more immersed in the Chinese culture, why we don't have spirits. We why no why we don't have like creatures, we didn't import any Chinese creatures from the mainland, and it's given me an interesting insight on the way the Chinese view the supernatural. So yes, I'm very happy to be part of this collection, and I'm very excited to be in this panel.
Awesome. Well, as echoing again, we're super happy to have you and your essay as well. Something Yvette brings up, like doing the research for this essay. I know for me, it was a little bit life-changing. It kind of established a relationship between my mother and I, who had been a little bit estranged. And so it's kind of built some bridges there, doing all this research. Has this collection, working on this, affected any of you in that same way? And we can just kind of pipe in, like, as you have answers.
I'll jump in. This one definitely for me. I was terrified writing this essay just because it is my mum's story, and I don't know if it's across other Asian cultures, but particularly in Chinese Malay culture, we don't talk about difficult emotions, and it's very difficult to have those conversations. But this essay felt pivotal. It was like an uncovering of the narrative of my mum's life, and I'd heard little fragments here and there, but it didn't kind of fit together into a solid narrative. So I had to interview her. I had to talk to her about events in her life and what they meant. And I think she worked with me on the essay, and she was so involved. She kept sending me emails. Have you sent it to Lee and Angela yet? I have more ideas. So that was really lovely. And I think it helped her, well, I hope it did, to reframe some of the crueler moments in her life and to understand them, and to hopefully come to a bit of peace with it. But also I think it's helped her to see what I do as not just monsters and ghosts and demons, but horror can be a really powerful lens to examine themes that we're struggling with. So yeah, definitely for me.
Awesome.
I can add a little bit to that because it resonates so much with my experience too. I write about my grandmother in my essay, but she never told me really about her family experiences, and so I didn't really know. And so luckily I have a 95-year-old great aunt who at this point in her life is comfortable telling me about what it was like to go through some of the trauma in the family history. But what it really made me understand is how hard it is to reconstruct history when there's no actual physical archaeological evidence. And so I've been really interested in diving more into collecting oral stories and oral histories and community stories from my local community, because I think we don't have enough of that either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. Well, we lost Yvette. Hopefully she'll be back. A, do you have anything to add to that? Not to put you on the spot.
I think much like everyone else, emotional topics are very difficult to speak about in our family, and we often don't really speak about them. Or if we do, it's like during moments of very, very high tension, if that makes sense. So when I was writing this essay, I actually didn't talk to anyone about it, and I feel like I'm still struggling to talk to my family about these things. So it was like a very internal reflection about the struggles that not only the women in my family have gone through, but also the men, and the things that like I've repressed myself over time.
Yeah, awesome. And I don't know if you got to hear the question, Yvette. It was, how has this changed, working on this essay for this collection? Has it changed anything in your life with the research? Like, for me, it helped me to rebuild a relationship with my mother. Like, has it affected you in, I want to say real life, but this is real life. This isn't fiction. So, can tell the fiction people here.
Apologies, everyone, for dropping in and out. The internet here is
Absolutely
bad.
fine.
Third world problems. Um, it happens all the time. To answer your question, um, as I mentioned, it changed in the way that it made me want to find out more about my Chinese side. So, like for example, we didn't grow up going to temple and stuff. So I sought out people who were familiar with these things, who were familiar with the ancestral offerings, and I wanted to find out how how it differed, and then from what it was like in China versus now that we're all here in the Philippines. And what I found was interesting because they still kept the same rituals, um, but it didn't. And it was like, for example, there's the when you do ancestral offerings, you aside from offering to your ancestors, you also offer to what they call the landlord, so the spirit of the place. And to them, it didn't matter. Like, okay, in the Philippines, my landlord's probably a different spirit from China. It doesn't matter. It still owns the ground. I will give them the offerings, and they seem to like it all as well. There isn't any thought beyond that, which I thought was quite fascinating. That it was very okay. This is it. Let's do this. But at the same time, there's a lot of racial tension here sometimes between the Chinese and Filipinos, which we people of our generation are trying to like we're more integrated, so we're trying to fix that, but it's still there as well. So it opened a whole new way of looking at things.
Okay. Okay, excellent. Well, I love how this has impacted us in a very real way. It's like every writer in this is feels like they've echoed that this has impacted them, in their life and like repaired or opened up new things. And I kind of want to go to the title, the unquiet part of the Unquiet Spirits title. And something, especially like Jean, you said that your mother, like going through this story, and she was so excited. It makes me wonder if, and I know for me that's been true. The unquiet part of this, like we're writing this for people who couldn't say these messages. I mean, that's my thought. How do you guys think of that? Like, do you feel like that's valid, or do you have a different idea of that?
I think that's a really good point. I was just thinking about the degrees that my mum and I did. Like we went to university at the same time. She studied modern Asian studies, and I studied psychology. And I think there are both ways to try to understand who we were, our past, and that sort of thing. And I never realized until recently when she said, because I've been, she's actually given me a lot of her textbooks because I'm researching something for the novel that I'm writing. And she said, well, she studied that to gain a bit of more of an understanding of who she was and where she came from and the reasons why her life was the way it was. And I never realized, I just thought she had an interest in Asian studies. And I think maybe sometimes doing those studies or coming at it from a tangent is a way that we feel safe to explore some of the issues in our lives. And I suppose for my mum, studying university, being and I know it's a bit of a stereotype, but the Asians, we value education very, very much. And so for her, it was an acceptable way to examine those issues. So I think, when we're doing these essays, it is a more direct way, but there might have been ways that we were exploring things before, but it came from a tangent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and when I was thinking a little bit about, why write this essay, what's the purpose it serves, I always go back to narrative plenitude, about having a vast volume and diversity of stories from similar experiences, but not identical experiences, because we're all Asian women writing horror, but we have very different lived experiences. And I think when there's an absence of narrative plenitude, what you get is this inverted relationship between art and culture, where it's almost like the art informs other people outside the culture of what they think the culture is. And what we're doing is basically giving a glimpse, a very small glimpse, slivers of each of our lived experiences to hopefully encourage and inspire new stories based on our narratives or similar narratives. So I think it's very like two-way. You know, we're cross-pollinating across many different artists, and I'm really excited to see what happens with the collection.
Yeah, me too. What do you guys think? Does anybody else have any input?
So I feel like these essays really help in the way that it voices things that a lot of us are not willing to voice or are too afraid to voice. And whenever like the women in my family talk about the difficulties in their lives, they talk about it in a way that almost diminishes the weight of it, almost like in a joking manner, like this is what they should do, are supposed to do. And yes, so I think in speaking about it in like a more serious manner and the way it impacts us in our identity and our freedom, I think a lot of people can connect with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as well, having so many voices together, I think that's very impactful, because particularly in recent times, you might not have felt safe being an Asian woman speaking out about your experiences, but when there's a collective of us and we're all saying these are our experiences, it's in a way it's a little bit easier to be brave when you have that avenue to talk about it.
Yeah. Do you guys have any
I think a
kind
lot
of
of us, I think all of us have experiences. Just continue. And I think, oh, I'm back. Yes. Hello. Yes. So all of us, I think, have a difficulty connecting with our parents. So I think you guys are brave to actually write about that. I don't know if you've noticed, mine does not mention family life at all. And as you can see, that means I'm not at that point yet. It's very hard. So I think just just listening to other people, knowing.
oops.
I really like to hear what she was going to say.
Well, we will get back to that. But what I heard her say was there's going to be an unquiet too, because Yvette has to like connect with her family, and that's her next essay. So that's where I'm going to take out of that.
Just sign her up before she knows.
Yeah, Yvette, you're not here to say no. So now there's an unquiet too. You have to write about your parents.
I'm taking notes. I'm writing it right down.
Yeah, everybody, there's witnesses. We've been seeing. Hello, everybody that's joined us. By the way, you're the witness to see that that's going to happen. Unquiet too. Lee is groaning now, and there goes the unfriend, and but something that I kind of want to cover a little bit while we wait for Yvette to come back is these stories have made an impact to us. I'm positive they're going to make an impact to the people that read them. The advanced readers the feedback has been phenomenal. Where do you want the story to go from here? What do you hope that this story does? I mean, I know it's not a story, but this collection, this work.
I hope it continues maybe what was started with Black Cranes, just that explosion of interest in Asian narratives. That's been really, really exciting. And I just hope it continues to build and build. I mean, if you look at what's happening in film, everything everywhere all at once.
Best film ever, by the way. I'm just going to put that in there.
And an explosion in interest in Korean horror, all of that. I think if we can be part of that groundswell, I would be extremely happy.
I agree. And what you missed, Yvette, was we've decided to do Unquiet Spirits 2 so that you can connect with your family, and that's your essay. You've already been assigned. So, and there's witnesses. Like all the people have heard us say this. So.
Got it. I have no choice.
Yeah, it has been done. Unless anybody has any more on that, I do want to, because we are running out of time, I want to make sure I ask you each about your essay particularly. I pulled questions out because each of these essays, there's so much layer of depth, and I don't even know if that's me as reading it. So much of it's resonating with me, so I'm getting like, I read it once and then a layer peels back, and then the next time I read it, it's a whole different meaning to me. So I pulled out some very specific things that I wanted to ask each of you. So be ready. These are all the dark secrets. I'm going to start with Yvette. In Fallen Leaves, New Soil, you have a quote where you talk about, and I'm quoting, "To this day, I find it hard to fully relate to my Chinese side since my siblings and I weren't raised in the traditional way, unless it involves something unpleasant. Mostly customs we didn't understand and weren't given a proper explanation for." Could you expand a little bit on that? Like, I just wanted to know what are some of the traditions specifically in your mind? Like, you brought up the offerings, but is there anything else?
Okay, well, wow, you zoomed in on the exact article, the exact paragraph where I'm like, let's not talk about my family.
Oh, I have a way of doing that.
It's amazing. So it ranges from the very, very mundane, like Chinese medicine. You're handed a bowl of black stuff and you're like, here, drink this. Why? Because the more serious things like death, where you're told to do all these things, but nobody knows why. I like asking questions. I guess I think it's one of the more annoying parts of me. So for everything that's done, I always ask, why is this happening? I guess it's also why I'm a writer, right? And one side of the family, my dad's side, is very patient. They'll be like, this is why it's done. They'll try to give me answers. But my mom's side, they just do things just because, and it causes me so much frustration. And I think I don't know if it's a universal Chinese thing, but a lot of the Chinese in the Philippines are like that. They'll just do things because. And I think it comes from a sense of self-preservation, where you're in a country that hasn't always been friendly to you. Like we were colonized by the Spanish, and they looked down on the Chinese, so they tended to massacre them every once in a while. I say this very casually, but it's not. It's a horrible thing. So I guess because of that, the Chinese. This is why we only have until third or fourth generation usually. Whereas other countries go back to say the ninth or 10th generation. And I think because of that, the Chinese here have gotten insular to protect themselves. And because of that, it's become all these beliefs are there, but very few people understand why. So I think it comes from that. And since it wasn't explained to me why these things had to be done, I tended to disregard them and focus on my Filipino side, or the way I learned about my Chinese side was through Hong Kong films, like the vampire ghosts. So those are examples.
Thank you. Yeah, and I do apologize for zeroing in on that exact. This is why I have no friends, okay? Because this is what I do.
No apology needed.
Excellent answer.
I'm glad to have cleared up that part of the essay.
How about you? I have a quote from you. It's the beginning of your essay, and I love this. I mean, I love all of these, but this is a particularly resonating opening. And this is the quote: "I often feel as though I'm a wandering spirit, both in the land I was birthed, China, and the land I've immigrated to, Canada. Settling in body does not always mean settling in mind and spirit." What is the story behind like that compelling opening? Like how did that come to you?
So I feel like as though there's always something, or I guess in case someone that I have left behind in China, it's almost like my child self is like stalled at 4 years old, following me out of sight, as if to say, like, don't forget me, and pulling at the back of my shirt as I age and with every step I take in Canada. So, yeah, that's how that opening came to be.
Okay, I love that. And I think that that probably resonates with a lot of us, especially now I'm here and I almost cried because I was like, that's exactly what I feel like. So I left all my stuff. But anyways, we won't go into that. Everybody's heard that one already. Francis, in belonging to fear, you refer to a well-meaning neighbor with, I love this because it reminded me of me, with frizzy dandelion white hair, it's getting there, who advises your popo, and this is in the story, you should only speak English. Using two languages confuses her, referring to you as a child. And I was curious about that because you work with a lot of young people through the Willingham Young Writers, and of course you have kids. What are your thoughts as an adult, you looking back on that thought, which is pretty common?
Yeah, well, first off, if your hair is really dandelion seeds, and I need to blow on that because I'll have a million wishes. So I know this now when I come visit you. You
yeah, you're
held out at me a
vacuuming
lot.
though, right?
You totally held out at me last time, all these wishes. But yeah, I think it's really interesting how I think with the immigrant experience, especially with children, you're presented with a hierarchy of culture when you're trying to assimilate. One is better than the other. And I get that there are practicalities of surviving in a new country, and that is the practicality of being able to, as you know, Angela, be able to speak and understand a different language. But what I would tell students and all writers and anybody really is to be proud of your culture, be proud of your heritage, because you can't change it. That's who you are. And so embrace it and use it to your strengths.
I like that. I like that empowering message, which is kind of what this book is all about. It's about our grievances aired, the grievances of our ancestors and family aired, but also that acceptance and that empowerment of who we are. All right, it's down to Jean. Sorry, Jean.
That's okay.
Nursery time, because of course, as horror writers, we all love our creepy nursery rhymes. Not that this one is creepy, but in Some Things Are Dangerous, but Can Be Lived With, the ghost baby of Malaysian mythology, your essay. There's a Chinese nursery rhyme that you say has been passed from your great grandmother to your grandfather, to your mother, to you, and now you're passing it to your children. And this nursery rhyme was the inspiration for the title of your story in Black Crane's Little Worm. And I wanted to hear, how do you feel like the acceptance and the perception, the meaning, I guess, of that nursery rhyme has changed generationally? Does it mean different things as you've seen it passed down, or what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, like Francis said, we don't have a lot of records of what it was like and what it might have meant to somebody in our past. And I think initially it might have been just a nursery rhyme, just something that you sing to your kids and you do the little actions and that type of thing. And it's just a nice little bonding moment with your children. But of course, being the horror writer, I've gone, well, I can apply it in this instance and make it horrific. But I also wonder whether or not, again, it's that tangential way of approaching something, and whether or not it's a way, particularly in the cultures where we don't talk about difficult emotions, these can be ways where you can quietly say something that is disturbing you. And for me, that's what this little nursery rhyme became. And I also love that experience of when you're writing a piece of fiction or maybe nonfiction, where your brain throws things up, and it's only afterwards when you hit that point and you realize why it's been brought up, and why, I mean, for me, why I chose the title Little Worm. And I had that nursery rhyme the back of my head. And at the time, it was just something that I remembered from my childhood. It wasn't particularly meaningful, but as I've dug into it a little bit more and written this essay, it's, for me anyway, for my generation, it's changed its meaning. But probably not for my kids. They're like, it was just something mom saying to us.
Yeah, so and that's, horror writers, that's what we do. Enthusiastically ruining your childhood memories. That's what we do. Sorry. We love it. I have a question from our viewers today, from Lee Murray, who is the co-editor of this, who I just want to say working with Lee has been a privilege and a pleasure. She is like the lion's share of this anthology. All the credit goes to her. So, but her question is, can she ask the panelists about what you thought about the messé approach, which I remember when we were first talking about, that was a unique idea. It's still a unique idea. But what did you guys think of that approach?
I'll jump in. It's, in case folks not familiar, I think it's the two words memoir and essay that are joined together, and that's how you write about it. And for me, it was really freeing, because the idea of doing a straight memoir where you're just pouring out some of your very personal things that you think about or experiences is quite confronting. And then the other side, writing a straight non-fiction piece, an essay, where you've got to be very clever and very articulate, that's also quite confronting. But being able to meld the two, and I think it's taking the positives from both sides makes a very powerful piece, because you have that personal connection, but it's also in a way educating the reader about some of the things that you were researching while you were writing your essay. And I think even though it makes the anthology a little bit difficult to classify, and it's given some advanced readers a little bit of a, they're not quite sure what to classify it and how to review it, I think it's much more powerful because it melds those two approaches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely see it as something that's going to stay and become much more popular and common. How about anybody else?
Well, I was thinking that it really fits what we're trying to convey, which is that memory, identity, and family, it's very messy, right? There's no form, there's no protocol. And so by giving us a way to take off the guardrails, a non-linear approach, it gave us a lot of freedom to play with structure, which is what I really appreciated about that. I could weave in, take things out, make it like music, come back with a refrain, bring in poetry, go back to the beginning, and it was all fair game. And that was something I think that worked really well for what we were trying to do.
Yeah. I think it's a more authentic approach as well, because the things that matter to
agree.
us are not, they're not like a linear thing. You take that, A.
I think there's something very liberating about just the name messé itself, because I think with an academic background, when I hear the word essay, I think about deadlines, university, hours and hours of research, spewing, nonsense right before the deadline. But with a messé, it's a little different. I feel like I can fully analyze like the very subjective nature of my life through a more objective lens, if that makes sense. So I can be both emotional, but then go back and take a deeper look at why things make me so emotional, and what is it about my culture and the way my family functions makes me think the way I do, if that makes sense.
Makes total sense. Yvette, do you have anything
I agree.
on that? Like,
For
what
me,
are your thoughts?
it felt like I agree. I agree with what everyone said. For me, it felt like a cushion. So it's not as hardcore personal as a memoir, but also the essay part, essay, as you can tell from my essay, as somebody who has trouble talking about Shakespeare, this part made it easier for to talk about what the more personal aspects of marine life. I think for the reader, if they're not Asian, the essay part will give them an understanding of why things are the way they are, and how the author processes her her experiences with regards to culture and identity.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that as it's another way to communicate kind of the more interior things that we're talking about in a way that can be accepted if you don't culturally understand it. Right. We are running out of time, which is always
Especially
so sad,
for me, I grew up. Okay.
Oh no, go ahead. We're not that out of time. Go ahead.
Oh no. Okay. I was gonna say. I was gonna say, especially for me, as I mentioned, growing up, asking adults why do we do this, and nobody giving me answers. I think the way we wrote it will be a big help, like
Yeah.
the readers and to us as authors.
Yeah, I agree. Which is why everybody needs at least 2 copies. I just had a professor, which I will email you guys about. Really excited. She teaches indigenous religions and things, and she's very excited to see Unquiet Spirits come out next week, and lots of good feedback. So everybody needs at least 3 or 4 copies. I'm going to say that. So see, Lindy, I did my job. No. 10 copies. Francis said it. Before we go, I want to make sure each of you has a chance to talk about what other projects you have coming up. Like, this is all about your moment, promote yourself, the other projects. I know we have a bunch of things coming from Unquiet Spirits. And so in between all of the millions of interviews and panel interviews and videos like this that you're going to be doing, what other things are you doing? And let's start with Yvette, and we'll go back around. What have you got coming up, Yvette? And where can we find you as well? Like, where can we find more?
Oh, sorry. Hi. Yes,
Oh, no.
I didn't hear you very well.
That's fine.
My book is called Waking the Dead. The other one is called Seehor, SEEYEWHOR. That just came out on ebook. So both of them are now available in ebooks. Please grab a copy. Grab 2 copies. Grab multiple copies. If you're in the Philippines, they're available in paperback.
Awesome. And I'm going to put everybody's websites in the links of this. I'll add them after this so everybody can go find these. Okay. And how about you, A? I keep calling you A now because we said AI earlier. Now it's messed me up. So I apologize, I.
No. So I have my debut novella, Lincoln, coming out April 4th. Very excited about that. And then, yes, buy 10 copies. Look for the limited edition. I have a mini collection coming out on March 2nd called Small Tales from Between Worlds. And one more, play on my name, called I Am I, about a cyborg named I, who is pretending to be AI, coming out in June. Also grab 10 copies of that.
My feet too.
yeah, 10-ish, 10, 20, you know. They make great gifts. How about you, Jean?
I don't know if it'll be coming out, but I'm working on my horror novel, which is based on the most successful pirate in history, Qingxi or Zheng Yatsao, depending on which dialect. And I've been doing a lot of research and outlining. So this year I will be writing her story, and I'm so excited. The more I research about her, the more I'm excited to write her story. Her confederation rivaled the Qing Empire in the region. They set up their own tax offices, almost like right next door to the official ones. And yeah, that's what I'll be working on. It's tentatively called The Red Dowager, All Debts Must Be Repaid. But we'll see what I end up with.
And we are very excited because we've been following you as you've started that. And so every time you mention it, it's like, so yes, no hurry, at your own pace.
Oh, well, Lee's already told me. Lee's told me to hurry the hell up, woman.
Thank you, Lee.
Okay.
We need this book. All right, how about you, Francis? What have you got coming up?
I have some short stories coming out, poetry coming out. I'm working on poetry, and let's see, what else am I doing? I'm going to be collecting some oral histories from the community, compiling them and putting them into an anthology just so that we can have that and then give that to museums and libraries, basically people who have been in the local community for a very long time, just to have that oral history recorded somewhere because there's really not much else that we can go to. And then the other thing that I'm working on is I'm putting together an anthology with some writers I enjoy working with. And so I'm going to do it through my press. So I'll do that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you guys all for joining me today to talk about Unquiet Spirits. And thank you for being unquiet and lending your voice to this collection. It's starting to be a movement of that began with black cranes, I feel like. And it's turned into this, and now there are so many things springing from this. I don't think I could list them all, the different projects that have begun from that root. So I just want to thank you all for participating, not only in this panel, but in being brave enough to share these essays and your stories and your poetry through all of these. And I hope you continue. And I also want to thank everybody who watched us, because thank you for taking time out of your evening. And please share this and buy 20 or 30 copies of Unquiet Spirits.
And I want to thank you, Angela and Lee, and Jane.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much. And all the links will be in the description when I update it. So, and bye, everybody. Oh, and the part 2, which I forgot to mention, we'll have Lee Murray, Celine Murray, KP Kolsky, and Elma Katsu will be joining us. And that is the follow-up to this one, part 2. So be sure to follow that. That link is in the description as well. So, and good night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Remember, 10 copies.
Yes, of everything. Everything.
Of everything.
All the things.
Of everything. Yes.
Of everything.